I'm going up on the mountain. I ain't coming down till morning. I'm going up on the mountain. I ain't coming down.
Hello and welcome to Goose Chats. We're so glad you're here. Thanks for joining us today. We're pre-recording this session because it's December and everybody has crazy travel schedules. So hopefully you'll forgive us. We'll be back live next week. Maybe not. It's hard with everybody's holiday schedules, but we will definitely have live sessions again in January. So we hope that you'll continue to stay with us. But in the meantime, I'm super excited today. We have some very special guests to talk about more geese. Yay! I'm Brittany Sweeney. I'm the communications manager with the Livestock Conservancy. And here we have Jeanette Behringer, our poultry expert extraordinaire, and the amazing Nate Rynish. Is that how you say your name?
Yes. Yeah, it is.
Perfect. Jeanette, do you want to say hello? And then Nate, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm really excited about talking to Nate because Roman goose is one of the geese that I really love to have for Christmas. I know a lot of folks like to have geese as pets, but I really love to eat geese. And I actually have a Roman goose in my freezer, and it's waiting for Christmas. And it's just one of those breeds that we don't talk a lot about. And one of the extraordinary things about geese for the table is people really get frightened about cooking geese, and because first, it's not cheap to raise a goose. They take a long time to raise, and they can be a little bit complicated to process. And so you're investing a lot of money into buying a goose for the table, and so a lot of folks get intimidated by it. And I'm really stunned at how many people have never actually tried goose, because it's the Prince poultry. It's wonderful stuff. And one of my favorite birds is the Roman goose, because they're very close to the traditional Christmas goose that you would have. And Nate, I would like to start by saying, can you give us a little bit of background on how you got involved with Roman geese, and why did you commit to the breed? It's kind of a random breed, and what got you started in it?
Well, I started in poultry realistically when I was in second or third grade, through 4-H and whatnot. I'm 25 now. And so since then, I've gone through a multitude of breeds of chickens, ducks, geese, and so on. Throughout all that time, I've met a lot of really great people, had some wonderful mentors, and somebody that used to take me to some shows and do a lot with me with the waterfowl was a guy by the name of Ryan Gartman. He lives in Sheboygan, Wisconsin, and back around that time, he was heavy showing and breeding all kinds of different stuff. And one of his favorite breeds was the Roman Tufted Goose. And I would see him at shows all the time, because he was at the same shows I would go to, and essentially befriended him. And from there, I got to see a lot of them. I fell in love with the look of them, because they're different. You don't see a lot of geese quite like them, I guess I would say, especially having the tuft and whatnot on them. And I just really enjoyed the temperament and seeing the style of bird that they were, like the style of the body and everything. And being the pink bill, the pink feet, especially on the birds that I have, I thought that was kind of striking to go with the white goose. So I think that's kind of why I eventually fell in love with them. And then there's really just not a lot of people that had them. So I really enjoy the challenge of trying to bring them up to standard and being realistically one of the few people that seems to want to raise them or be very serious and dedicated to raising them. So I've just kind of taken it from there, and I've become a grandmaster exhibitor in the APA, showing them through a lot of years of breeding and trying to get them to a point that they were quality to beat other birds like Chinese in the light goose class. That has been a major challenge, and I've just taken a lot of pride in that since, and I've just come to love the breed even more and more ever since.
That's fantastic.
Well,
Before we jump into any more
like,
questions and do like a real deep dive into the Roman goose, I just want to say thank you to our sponsor, Pro, for sponsoring Goose Chats this month. We appreciate you, and I'm going to play a quick 1-minute video by them. Don't go away. Stay with us. We're going to get like right down into all the details, and then Jeanette will also be right back.
Champions, colleagues, roommates, and personal trainers. Whatever role they play, they're an important part of our lives. In their quiet way, and their not-so-quiet way, they keep us young, on our feet, on the go. They pull us back to nature and push us toward the next adventure. And as much as we count on them, they count on us all the more to nurture their lives with the same commitment.
Can you hear me
to
at all,
protecting them, helping them grow and thrive, treating them as well as they treat us, by giving them a little more of our lives. Because no matter what role they play, out here or in here, we're here to make their lives
technical
the best
difficulties.
they
You
can
able
be.
to hear me at all?
Manipro, nurturing life.
Yep, I can hear you, Jeanette. Can you hear me okay? Jeanette must be having internet issues. It's a hard thing sometimes being out on the farm. You don't get great internet.
Yeah, I understand that.
Absolutely. Cool. I've got all of our questions. Let me see.
Can you hear me at all?
Yep, we can hear you, Jeanette. Can you hear us?
Oh, okay. Well, I shut off my video, so we'll try. Yeah, so I was saying that with a lot of exhibition poultry, one of the things that really stands out for me is that people forget about productivity and the fact that a lot of these animals were meant to be good table birds.
Yeah.
And so is that part of what you're aiming for, is not only breed standard, but good table birds?
Yes. But also in a way that is realistically part of the standard, because with standard bred poultry, we're also supposed to be breeding for the types of qualities that the birds were intended for themselves. So especially with the Romans, they're supposed to be a small, compact bird, and be like, I describe them as being kind of like blocky, almost square. So you're trying to gain carcass quality, and then of course obtain meat quality on top of all that. Realistically, it should go hand in hand to anybody that is trying to breed standard bred poultry.
Yeah, I totally agree. I raise a breed of chicken that was, supposed to be a top table bird in France, but, for almost 100 years, nobody's been breeding them for the table. And
Right.
so I really, the basis for a lot of the work we do is that, breeds have a job, and a lot of the breeds that we work with, their job was to be on the table. And so, it's really important quality that a lot of people kind of forget, because they're looking for, pretty birds for, show. And
Right.
so it's really great to hear that you're, taking into consideration the other stuff too. So, what got you talk about the people that got you started in it. What what are the qualities of the Roman that you really like? And when you're looking at your flock and trying to pick the animals that you're keeping, what makes a good Roman goose?
The body structure in particular is very, very important, I would say. A lot of Romans today are very long bodied and kind of thin up in the shoulders and everything. They should be a shorter bodied bird, and their back length should be about twice the length of what their shoulder width actually is. But they are supposed to be rather, I'd say a good word is dense and compact. So what I really try to strive for is I describe it like a boxy bird, kind of square looking bird that's broad and also deep bodied, not extremely long. And the same goes even for like the neck and the skull. You want a fairly wide skull. You don't want something thin and trim, and a neck that's short and thick as well. Those are probably the biggest qualities that I try to find in the Romans. Actually, what people are surprised by is that my biggest selection is not on tuft size, because the standard really doesn't talk about the overall size. It describes the shape of the tuft. And a lot of folks that I've talked to in the past, even the judges, they're not always that concerned about tuft size. It's all about the shape and then overall that structure, that body structure of the bird. Maybe a good way to describe the body density and everything, how I was told when I first started was, it's like trying to fit 10 pounds of feed into a 5-pound sack. Like that's the kind of imagery that we're trying to portray with a good quality Roman goose.
I think I've got some
certainly
pictures. Go ahead, Jeanette.
Yeah. I was going to say that certainly makes for a good table bird too.
Yeah.
But did you want to show some of the pictures? Nate had sent us some great images.
So people can kind of see what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Here's from another angle.
Yeah, it's really a tight-looking, compact bird. It's fabulous. Mm-hmm.
And I think we have a tiny one. So cute.
So let's talk a little bit about, the reproductive. So if you're going to be breeding Romans, what do you expect as far as average egg laying, and what kind of hatchability do you have? Are they very fertile?
So as far as egg laying goes, I don't have exact numbers from personal experience. I guess it's not something that I've always recorded, but I can tell you that I would consider them to be pretty fair layers. I get numerous eggs out of one female, so they are fairly productive in that aspect. As for fertility and hatch rates, for me, it seems to be very variant on the weather that I have, and that goes across the board for pretty much all the breeds of geese that I've ever owned. When the weather is not very consistent, it's up, down, and goes from cold to warm one week to the next. In the spring, my fertility is usually worse in the times when it goes kind of cold, but when it's warm and ideal conditions, I've had anywhere from 50 to 90% fertility amongst all of my pens. And that's kind of varying on the ages of the birds too. I have had birds here that were anywhere from, a couple years old breeding to 17 years old. And even the ones that were 17, I was getting fertile eggs out of them. Of course, not high fertility, but I still got some fertility out of those old birds even. So they do fairly well, but I think one of the biggest problems for me is they seem to want to start laying really early spring, and for my weather, early spring, we're still sometimes talking freezing conditions, and it's just really cold, and so that seems to affect them a lot. They're kind of variable. It's dependent on the situation, but other than that, I would say they're very fair when it comes to overall production, fertility, and hatch rates. I've had very good luck with them otherwise.
Do you mostly, hatch with an incubator, or do you find some of the geese actually hatch their own?
So I've not had very good luck letting my geese hatch their own eggs. On occasion, they've done it and have done okay, but any other time that I've seen to let them try and set on their own, it just hasn't worked out in my favor. So in my experience, the mothering ability of the birds isn't that phenomenal. I do very well hatching these birds out of incubators, and that's what I do for pretty much all of my birds, my ducks, chickens, geese. I use an incubator. I hand turn on a daily basis, at least twice a day, so that the eggs can turn at 180 degrees. I'll even go ahead and mist and sometimes cool the eggs as well. And using that process has led to a lot of success hatching the geese in the incubator.
What about, let's talk a little bit about diet. Is there any particular diet that you feed them that, improves fertility, or, what do you feed them throughout the year?
So the main basis of their diet at all times is a local mill up this way actually makes a waterfowl pellet. It's an 18% protein pellet. It seems to be a very balanced ration for them. But on top of that, some of what I've come to find is the most important with breeding any kind of waterfowl and raising any kind of waterfowl is the ability to graze, especially with geese, because they love grass. So they'll go out and consume as much grass that's really available to them. My geese like to go ahead and consume that before they eat a lot of the feed that I'll offer to them. The niacin content in grass is very important for their structural development, especially from a young age on. And then around that breeding time, I will go ahead and cut some of the pellets with oats, because even though oats may not offer a lot as like let's say a energy basis, they have some to offer in other means of nutrition, and that seems to help very well and kind of cut down on fat, so the birds aren't too fatty or anything like that after winter coming into the spring. So that will help with their overall reproduction, laying, and fertility.
I think a lot of folks don't realize that geese are kind of like the cows of the poultry world. And, at our place, we actually had a season when we had some American buff geese in our front yard, and I didn't have to mow the grass all summer, which was really awesome. And, there's a reason why you have all those Canada geese and all those golf courses, because they really are grass eaters. And it's something that makes geese really cost effective if you're looking at, if you've got great grazing opportunities for the geese, it cuts your food bill quite a bit. Can you talk a little bit about that? Like when your geese have access to good grazing, how does that affect your food bill?
Significantly less. I mean, when they have access to grass, which is what I try to do at all times, you can go ahead and give the birds, say you give them a normal day's ration of feed. for anybody in particular. It seems that in the summertime, when the grass is really lush and like flourishing, they'll go several days without sometimes touching or only eating very little of their pellets and such. So my feed bill kind of goes down pretty significantly. How much, though, I can't exactly tell you because of all the chickens and the ducks that consume the rest of it. But they love grass. They will graze all the time when the opportunity is given, graze and forage. And as I said prior, the niacin content in grass is very important for the development of the birds. In fact, pretty much when they're old enough as babies to get out on grass, I let them, because it just seems to do very, very well for their growth and even the overall condition in the long run, whether it's that first year conditioning from a gosling up to adulthood, or even their mature adult years, like when you're preparing them for shows and whatnot. It seems to just help them fill out and have just overall great health.
When do you start introducing your goslings to the grass?
Well, around here, I try to whenever the weather is good and it's warm enough for them to go outside. But for an age, usually the 3 to 4 weeks seems to be a pretty good time for them to be able to come out on grass, because they've kind of developed on feed and they're really getting more curious about going out and doing some grazing and foraging.
So do they figure that out on their own? With like some of the poultry I work with, they have to be shown what to do. Do the goslings kind of figure out that, hey, this is grass, so we should eat it?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah, they do actually, because I don't when I raise them, I don't bring them back into the flock. Like I hatch out of an incubator and everything, and then I've got a facility that I brood them in for an amount of time, and then they don't get introduced to any other adult birds until they're about 4 months old. So they have to learn all of it on their own.
I wish I could have that with my chickens. My young chickens, they're dumb as dirt, and you could put all these goodies in front of them and they're like, oh, I'm afraid of it. But it isn't until they're hanging out with the older birds where they're like, let me at it, and they figure out, oh, this is good stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it has to do with general curiosity.
Yeah. Well, I do find that geese are actually quite curious. They when we had our the buff geese in our front yard, they would actually climb up the stairs and look in our front door and wonder what we're doing. And geese are just the hardest thing I find with geese is, if you're going to have them as meat birds, they're just so darn nice. It's really hard to think of them as like, Christmas dinner.
Right.
Yeah. And so how do you market the birds? Do you find there's a strong market for geese? Do you, is your primary market for breeding stock, or do you sell, birds for the holidays, or what's your strongest point for marketing these birds?
Breeding stock, essentially, because a majority of what people know of me is from showing, exhibition. So people contact me either through word of mouth or like social media, Facebook, things like that. That's kind of where I advertise, and then also the Poultry Press newspaper. But it's always for breeding stock, because anything that I end up like butchering is usually for myself, because in my area there doesn't seem to be a lot of people that want like duck and goose for the table. So that's been a little bit of a struggle. I've tried to
Right.
use social
That's
media.
just crazy talk. They've just
Yeah,
not had Goose and Duck because
that's
it's
that's
just
what
some
I
of the
think. I try telling people about how good it is and everything, and I do know that there are some folks that have outlets like call buyers, that they send everything down to Chicago. Apparently, there's a lot more people down in the big cities, which is still quite a ways away from me. That seems to be where most of the market is. So I I don't know. It's been a bit of a struggle to try to get it that way, but I have no issues with consuming them on my own and keeping them for myself, and then just selling breeding stock to any show that I go to. Since I travel quite a bit, judging or showing, I'm usually able to deliver birds to anybody that wants them.
Yeah. Well, do you have any experience with the non-tufted Roman geese? Because that's also another part of the breed, and there aren't that many that are not tufted. Have you ever worked with those, or you basically have stuck with the tufted?
I basically just stuck with the tufted. I've never tried any of the, as I've heard them called, the common Romans. Um, I've seen one or two people in the States that have had them, and the only time that I really saw them with them seemed to be because they actually came out of their tufted birds. So that's the only experience that I've ever had with them, is I saw one or two people had them, and that's all, because they're definitely not prevalent in the States, I would say.
Yeah. Well, so if people are thinking about getting Romans, what would you say is the how can I so if folks are thinking about getting geese, why would they consider the Romans? Are they less noisy? Are they good table birds? Or, if you're going to try and talk somebody into having a Roman goose, what would you tell them? This is the breed for you.
Well, both of those things that you just said are pretty good qualities that I would say. Mine really aren't noisy birds. The only time that they really like to make noise is when they see something, or something kind of sets them off, like an alarm. Which anybody kind of understands the history of the Roman goose. They talk about the Roman goose essentially sounding off an alarm, and they still kind of do the same things for me here. They're not very noisy like Chinese. I have Chinese as well, and my Chinese are significantly louder than the Romans are. And the other thing that I would definitely say is, for the table, they're not going to be as large as your heavy or medium sized geese. Mine generally dress out between 8 and 9 pounds. And I think that that's a very, very fair carcass for the birds. And that's what I personally like, is to have that kind of smaller goose. I don't need a very, very big, large bird. It's plenty for myself and even a couple other people. On top of that, I think they're just very majestic. They keep to themselves, and they can take care of themselves. Kind of like we had talked about, their ability to graze and forage. And to me, there's just not really another goose like it. So they're unique.
Well, and my last question is, if somebody wants to get involved with Roman geese, how do you get started? Where do you go?
Yeah, call me. um, yeah, there are some breeders out there. A lot of the folks that are currently breeding them, I will say that I know, have started from myself. There were other breeders, of course, before me as well. As I do know of a couple in Canada. So if there's anybody that watches this from Canada, there are some breeders up there. And then in the States here, I've got myself and a couple other friends across the country that are raising them or starting to. So you can always, as I said, you can always give me a call, or the IWBA, International Waterfowl Breeders Association, is an organization that can be contacted because they have also, know people that are breeders that can get you into contact with anybody that might be interested in the Roman goose. So there are definitely options out there.
Well, awesome. Gosh, it was a pleasure talking with you, and I'm hoping we're going to encourage people to think about Roman geese. I'm a big goose fan, and I think that if folks really knew how cost effective it is to have geese, and
Mm-hmm.
that they're kind of like the cows of the poultry world, that more
Right.
people would have geese. And from a conservation standpoint, what's really frightening is how few people are major breeders of geese and
Yes.
large waterfowl, and we really need folks to get excited about them. And
Mm-hmm.
I hope that folks that start investigating more about geese. And I think that if people understand that you can offset your feed with grazing possibilities, that
Mm-hmm.
hey, if you look at the financials of it, that geese are actually quite cost effective.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
beyond that kind of starter point, I would say, they consume quite a bit of feed and everything as young birds and babies, and then once they get to the point where they can forage and graze, you have options. And like I had stated prior, I utilize oats too, and some other whole grains on occasion to supplement the birds. And if you're in an area where you have access to a mill, a feed mill, and you farm, and that you can get whole grains at the different commodities at market prices, you can actually be very cost effective in that manner as well.
Yeah, I wish my chickens would eat more grass, because I remember when I first got started in chickens, I could get a bag of feed for about $12, and now
Right.
it's like 22.
Yeah.
So if they ate grass, it would be a lot nicer for me.
Mm-hmm.
But thank you so much, Nate. And Brittany, do we have any other things that we need to mention within
Yes.
our...
Nate, you said people could reach out to you. Do you have a website or a Facebook page you want people to go to?
I don't. I have a personal Facebook page for myself. It's my name that is on here. If you can message me on like Facebook. Otherwise, email too is my last name, Rynish, Rynish. It's Rynish Poultry at yahoo.com. You can feel free to go ahead and contact me that way. I also have, if you find me in breeders directories, or if you're members of the American Poultry Association or American Bantam Association, my name will be in there somewhere in an ad, or either under the judges' ads. So I can be contacted in any of those ways.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm sure people are going to start reaching out to you after this airs.
I hope so, because we definitely need some more breeders out there. We need a lot more presence, I think, with the Roman geese. There's a lot of interest developing in the birds, and we're getting a lot better quality out there now than what there used to be. So I definitely hope that this strikes some interest in a lot of people.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
super
so
exciting.
Yeah.
Geese for everyone. Yay.
Yes. Geese are amazing. I'm so excited. I'm about to get some Sebastipols, and I could not be more excited.
That's not my fault. Just tell your husband that.
Well, I was thinking about Sebastopols or Roman Tufteds because the Romans are smaller and they eat all of the grass, and I don't want to mow my lawn. So I was like, I need some sustainable lawnmowers. Like, just put them out front and it'll be fine.
Absolutely.
Anyway, just want to say a big thank you to Nate, a big thank you to all of our members and supporters for listening in today and for making programs like this possible. We appreciate you, and we appreciate you supporting more breeders of geese like Nate here. And also, big thank you to ManaPro for supporting us through sponsoring Goose Chats this month. If anybody has questions, please reach out to Nate if they're specific to Roman Tufteds. Otherwise, you can leave a comment here and we'll get back to you once this airs and we'll write a little response. Hope everybody has a great afternoon and we will chat soon. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks, Nate.